Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to On the Other Side Leadership After Transition. Great evening, great evening, great evening. Got a lot in store for you. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest. But before we get to the wonderful, wonderful guest, I just want to say welcome to Thursday night, right? I hope you had a very positive day today. I hope everything's going well for you. And I hope this night treats you fine. If you're watching football tonight, I don't know who you're going for, but the Rams are kind of looking good. So, anywho, we'll go from there. Anyhow, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, and I got to tell you, it's for any of you who watch me regularly, you know that I'm sort of like a social media stalker. I watch people regularly on social media because they're making huge impacts in the transition space for the military. So I want to get out there and I want to see who's the who and bring that information and content to you guys because I don't know if you follow people on LinkedIn like I do, but when you can see pictures and events and things that are happening in the transition space that just motivate you, and you don't know why people are doing what they do, but you just love the content they provide, you got to do it. So this gives me an opportunity to bring you somebody who I want to know why they do what they do and what she's been doing over the course of the last year and a half in which I've been watching is something not short of amazing, actually not short of amazing, well past amazing, and I'm really just thankful that she's given me some time. So without further ado, I want to bring to you all Miss Chaunte Myers. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you for taking out of your time. I'll tell you, for anybody that does watch, you will know that taking some of your time is very, very, very precious because you're busy, and we appreciate what you're doing. Truly appreciate what you're doing for our veteran community.
Thank you.
Outstanding. So tell me where you're coming from today. So I'm here in Tampa, Florida. At some point in time here in the near future, probably 30, 45 minutes or so, it's going to start lightning like it's crazy because that's what happens here. And then it's going to start pouring and it's going to feel like you're in the middle of a hurricane for about 25 minutes. And then it's going to be over with. But that's me here in Tampa. So where are you coming from today?
So I'm near Houston. So Houston, Texas.
Yeah. Houston. And you had said it with the accent. You got it going, right? Houston, Texas.
That's right.
All right. So let's start by telling us a little bit about who Chaunte Myers is, where you're from, and what made you kind of join the military. What was that thought process? And then give me a little bit of a background of what you did in your military career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Air Force because my father was my recruiter. So there doesn't even need to be another reason, right? He had to make goal. I'm trying to help him out, and so I joined. For actually my whole family, and I know you've been following me on social media, but my whole family has served in the military. So grandparents, aunts, uncles, and then both of my parents. My father was a PJ and my mother was security forces, and they actually met at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. And so they got together. They made a miraculous love child, and I decided to follow in their footsteps and join the military. Both of my brothers served as well. They're younger than me. Okay. And so when I first joined the military, I came to my dad and I told him we had gone from an amazing lifestyle as a dependent.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm a strong advocate for the spouses, the dependents, and the caregivers, anyone who's involved in the military lifestyle, because I've lived it. And so we traveled, we moved every few years, but then we lived in Japan the longest. And so I grew up through the critical years in Japan, then moved to Ohio, where he ended up recruiting me. And one could understand very quickly why I wanted to get out of Dodge.
Yeah, right.
So high school wasn't what I thought it was going to be. You're coming as a military dependent. I was able to, my mom homeschooled us. I was able to have a fun life and model and travel in Japan, and then got to the US and realized that I was short, and that didn't work out.
It's funny that you say I got to the US and realized you're short, and then you talk about being in Japan, and it's just like it's a natural height, right?
I was tall there. Yeah. Yep. So the second best option was joining the military, right? My father had told me it was 99, and he told me to go logistics, supply. Mm-hmm. He said all of his buddies that went supply had their education, and I'm assuming because they didn't go PJ, right? So you're looking at the difference in career fields, but you're looking at prior to online education. So he was trying to think about the best interest in knowing, my intellect. I graduated high school early at 17. I graduated basic training at 17 when everyone was walking the stage. So I had a plan. I definitely had a plan for why I wanted to join. I wanted to serve like my family had served, but I also wanted to years with an education.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you decided to join, I mean, obviously you were recruited out of Ohio, which again, I could understand because I'm from New York right there. And it's not to say it's a bad place. It's freezing. Like, so
Yes.
everything in which I chose to do was based on temperature. I mean, I went to basic training where it'd be warmer. I went to my tech school or my AIT for the Army folks for where it's going to be warmer in the wintertime. Just so you know, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, which was hot. It was too hot in the summertime. When I got to Fort Gordon, it snowed, and Fort Benning, it snowed. So I chose the Georgia places because I didn't want snow anymore. Anyhow, that's just my wonderful story of why I joined or where I picked to go. But I wanted to get out of the cold. So understanding that Ohio gets cold, I don't want to leave too, and that's why I'm here in Florida. So you join the military. You join the Air Force, right? So the Air Force. Now, do all your family, do they all serve in the Air Force?
My immediate family, we all serve in the Air Force. We were the brighter bunch. Right?
That's what they say, right?
That's what they say. It's pretty sick, but my dad used to tell the Army and the Marines, because obviously all their offices were next to each other, that if they needed to borrow me, they could, right, to make his goal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So no, definitely we were all Air Force. My sister-in-law is Army, so she actually transitioned last year as an Army captain, a nurse, and my husband was Army. So as well.
Well, at least you married up, they say.
We married up. We married up. Absolutely.
Good. So you joined the Air Force and tell me a little bit about that. I mean, so you're a logistician, right? That's, you got to use the proper vernacular, right? But a logistician in the Air Force, which, it's really interesting when you start talking about to young folks about the Air Force and do you fly? I mean, there's very, there's a lot of support jobs and all services, right? But a lot of people that don't know anything about the Air Force, they always think that you're a pilot. But a logistician in the Air Force is pretty, I mean, it's interesting. I think that even in the Army, those are my favorite people to be around, right? I always go to the supply people. That was the thing. And it didn't matter because they always had the things that you needed and they'd get it to you in a timely manner. Well, and get you out of a lot of trouble. But anyway, so tell me about your career a little bit. Well, how long were you in, and what are some of the things that you did that while you were in the military?
So when I first joined, that's always the joke, right? I first joined in 99 and in 2000 to 2001, I had a government credit card and I went shopping every Friday. And I delivered supplies. So I had a wonderful time. Of course, obviously, you're delivering office supplies, you're delivering the markers people have asked for. I was at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and it was for technical school for the missileers. And so they were very excited when I'd come by and deliver the office supplies. And being supply, you got to order whatever you wanted.
There you go.
Obviously. Yeah. And so I remember my whole desk was decked out in purple. My supervisor would tease me and he's like, what have I done? But the first thing that I did was I enrolled in school. And that was the most critical, the most important, was that I enrolled in school with the local community college, having, the forethought that I was going to get out again with my education, got the backpack, felt like the college kid, was done every day by 2:00. And then obviously September 11th happened and changed the Air Force as we knew it. I'd like to think that the Army was a little bit more prepared for that, right?
Sounds good. I mean,
sounds good.
It sounds good. I mean, I guess we were prepared. I mean, I would think so. I mean, I was in Korea, so it was crazy. But just a side note, real quick. I said 30 or 45 minutes, but if you hear the rumbling, that isn't my daughter. I know I gave you that precursor warning that maybe the 3-year-old will come charging and barreling through the door, but it's thundering outside. So I want to throw it out there that if the power should go out and this should cut off because of this, I sincerely apologize, but we'll go along, right? Anyhow,
absolutely. We got this.
Yep.
Yeah. So if one of my kids run in, that's okay. I'll let them say hi on video. Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, bottom line is this isn't like CNN or Fox, and I'm not losing the job for it. So it's perfectly fine. They're good folks. I love my kids, so they can do whatever. So it's all right.
And for the record, this is real news.
Yeah, it is. This is real news. Yeah, outstanding. So your first couple of years are they go by, and then what happens next?
So I ended up being stationed at Warner Robins, Georgia, and I was part of a combat logistics support. And my Air Force days, as I knew it, kind of changed rapidly. And so a few Air Force deployments, and then I was moved to. We got to laugh, right? Take time.
Oh, we do. Oh, there's some laugh. I was enjoying almost my whole career. So, I've had actually a lot of airmen that have gone to some places that I haven't been, but we do make fun of them regularly when they come from San Antonio and deploy to Tampa. I'm like, yeah, that's a deployment anyway. But
yeah. I'm like, can I get that gig? But
right.
So then I was moved to education and training, and being in education and training, I thought I was safe from deployments. I was important. I was assigned, so an E5. And what ended up happening was literally it was 9:36 a.m. I received the call, tomorrow morning, you're leaving, pack your bags, we're deploying with the Army. And I thought it was some kind of sick joke, okay, I'm important here. I'm needed as a staff sergeant in education and training. And they said, no, really, we had someone fall out. We need you to go. My first reaction, I'm irritated, but at the same time, I knew I was single. I didn't have children. I'd rather go than somebody else have to go. And so then I ended up finding out one of my troops was called to go, and he was getting ready to have his first child. So there were a lot of feelings of anger at the time of why we were taking on this mission. And my father was still in recruiting command, and I called him. He lived about 40 minutes away. They came to my aid, helped me pack my bags, and I was on my merry way. And we went to Fort Carson, Colorado, a month of training. Learn how to do IVs on a dirty warehouse floor. Right. Again, I'm logistics. I'm like, what are we doing?
Well, at least you had a we're usually outside like in this.
But the funny thing is the Army put us in the spot and made us run. I remember when it was still, oh my gosh, early.
Yeah.
For no reason at all other than to laugh.
It's right? Humorous. We have to find ways to laugh.
So it's going through situations like that, though, and deploying to the Iraqi border and going through what we went through that make you who you are after. Yeah. And we choose to be who we are after. And I always say that when the dust settles, who are you going to be? When the dust settles, your path before you have choices. Yeah. And if you're still living, we have to keep pressing forward. And what's our next mission? And what is our purpose for life? Why are we still able to breathe? And so that's always, when I look back and I think about those times, that's what made me stronger. And they've made me who I am today.
It's awesome. I actually speak on choice, right? And so it's great to hear you say that. We have to do everything. We have a choice to wake up happy. We have a choice to be angry. We don't have the choice to wake up typically, right? That God does that. Here, someone says, "Hey, shake you, gets you up." My alarm clock is typically what does that. But I get to choose each step of the way how I'm going to react to people, react to traffic, react to job, react to all that stuff. It's a choice. So I love the fact that you do say that. That's something that I strongly believe in as well. So that's great. So you go on a deployment with the Army, and that's it's an experience, right? And you come back, and where do you go? Do you go back to Colorado from after your deployment, or do you go back to your regular scheduled routine back with the Air Force?
Yeah, so we went back to Warner Robins, Georgia, and they told us that our unit was closing down and we'd all be PCSing. And at the time, I had a year left in Roads. I called home in tears. They made me deploy with the Army. Yeah, what am I going to do? And I was at that 9-year mark, in the Air Force, a little over 8 years at the time.
Mm.
And I thought, what am I going to do? What is my future? I know what I'm passionate about doing. And supportive, they had settled in Texas. And my father and mother told me, they said, baby girl, come home. And so as soon as I could, I transitioned from active duty to reserves, and I came home.
Okay. Now I like the transition from active duty to reserves. It gives you a little bit of, I guess you'd say, some comfort. It's there, I mean, it gives you a little bit of, some sense of security. You're falling into something that's an unknown, but at least you got that security. So it's always a good option. And I'm a firm believer. Well, me personally, at 10 years, I said, if I go a day over 10, I'm going to do 20. And just at 20, I said, if I go a day over 20, I'm going to do 30. That's just the way I was always doing it. And at 20, I got out, right? But at 10, it was that choice. And I stayed. A lot of people will tell me how brilliant I am because I stayed and now I can retire. Yeah, but brilliance was only made based on lack of better choices or lack of a better plan. I didn't stay in, and not to say I'm not a patriot, and I will never talk negative about a single moment of my military experience ever, but I would tell you that my desire to stay wasn't because of the fact that I had a desire to serve. It was because I knew that had I left at any one of those little incremental reenlistment times, that I would have went back exactly to where I was, because I had not planned. I didn't get the education like you were mentioning. And I try to urge so many people to do while they're in, because it's there, take advantage of it. But because I didn't have that, it was like, I can get out and then what? Or I can stay in and, figure it out in this next 4 years. Well, the next 4 years had the same result. And then the next 4 years. And then at the 15-year mark, I said, well, I got a plan. I'm going to stick it out for another 5. Right. I mean, it just kind of is how it worked out. So you get out and you transition. So when you went through the process itself, because you had the reserves, which is a little bit of a comfort zone, it's still a transition nonetheless. That's just step one of the transition, right? Because there's many, many more, and I think it's always continual. But what was it like as you got out? What was your career focus? What were you going to do?
Well, I remember going through the TAP class first off. I remember the whole process of going and sitting through TAP at the time, and this was 2008. I remember having to have a resume, turning around, kind of practicing with one another. Was it good? Was it not good? But really the excitement, I think, as a female, of being able to be in civilian attire, right? And so you're like, oh, I get to play dress up for 5 days. Mm-hmm. And you kind of go through these emotions and you think, well, I'm joining the reserve. So you're kind of half in, half out, because you're unsure of what you need to focus on. Mm-hmm. Right? You're unsure of what applies to you. And so you're not able to weed it out, because it's a great program, but it's static in nature. We're not going to change that. We're not going to go up to DC and fight for it. I've kind of tried. And so when you kind of try, kind of loud and vocal. But what you start to see is that you have to do it. Again, it comes back to choice. And so why are you making that transition? Why are you get out? And whether it's retiring or transitioning, do you have a plan in place? And I felt that I did. I felt that the fear of deploying again with y'all, right? It was not going down that road again. I know I don't want a PCS somewhere else we were all going to California at the time. I didn't want to make that move again. And so at 28 years old, I decided to transition out of the military, join the reserves, which was one of the smart moves that I made. I did negate all of the VA assistance. I did not think that it applied to me. I thought that would hinder my chances of joining the reserves, because I literally transitioned out and the very next day signed the reserves. And so obviously I've come a long way and I've learned a lot of lessons and done it the hard way. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay, because my stories now are able to assist others and to coach. And I'm thankful that we're doing a much better job with the VA process now than we were back in 2008.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it's really amazing. I've got an opportunity through my career to talk to people. I talk a lot. I don't know if you know, you'll figure it out, whether it's a short show or if you ever see me on social media. I talk forever, but I'm always out. I always put myself in places to learn about people. And I'll tell you, at a very young age, in 1999 and 2000, I was talking about getting out. I mean, I was able to, right, at that time. And I was talking to the TAPS folks, or at that time it was just the I don't remember what it was called, because it wasn't Soldier for Life, it wasn't it wasn't TAPS. Whatever the name was, it was just a transition assistance office, right? I mean, that's where you went to. But I talk to people all the time about certain things. But it was so, I don't want to say broken. It was what it was for the time. It's kind of like technology. It increases and it gets better through time. Well, the program wasn't up to snuff. The VA stuff was good for the time, but not great, and surely needed to be, improved upon. And it still needs improvement. But man, what a significant difference the VA is now than what it was when you got out, or when, oh, there you go, Jermaine Salmon jumped in and on this little thing and told me it was ACAP, because that's what it was, ACAP. I never
ACAP. I couldn't remember, and I've taught this for so many years. I couldn't remember. I had to get it in my head. I'm like, no, the Army's the same now as every other branch.
Right.
I would say that the VA process back then, unfortunately, when I joined the military, it was still, even when you look at mental health, the hospital, they were wearing white. The mental health facility was a separate facility. And so if you saw anyone walk into that facility, they were crazy, right? And so when you look at our culture and you start to look at what we go through and the process and trying to understand, especially from the mental side, I think that it's very important that we coach and we train and we speak on the processes with the VA, and to be prideful about it, to be proud that you have those resources and that support structure. Because on the other end, I always joke about this when I transitioned out and I had a job right away. Again, I went to the reserves and I was thankful for that training and that opportunity, but I was also a personal trainer immediately. I had certifications, I had licensures, I had my plan, I knew what I wanted to do, but I found myself entrapped into a world of wanting the camaraderie, wanting the support, wanting those that understood what I had been through. And I found myself missing the military components that maybe at a time I didn't think that I needed.
Right.
And I think that was even that mental support, that VA support. The reason why we end up seeking out resources or not seeking out resources and failing, because we start negating the critical aspects that we had.
Right.
And so I always go back to the structure. And in my opinion, we do it right in the military. We have a support system.
Yep.
Everybody knows your business, right? And sometimes it's annoying, but rightfully so, because no matter if we don't like each other, no matter the argument, it's like the bad marriage, right? You have each other's back.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're going to do what's right. At the end of the day, you're going to work together for the greater good, because you're servant leaders and you're going through a mission together, and you realize what you have to do to succeed, right? So when you transition out, and I'm looking around me with a bunch of other personal trainers that are trying to make their monthly goal, and they're trying to make and get the clientele and do whatever cool moves that they're doing. I think at the time it was the Bosu ball, and I see them jumping around and doing crazy stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's not my way. I've got a plan that'll work for you. It's old school. It may not be as cool, but I'm going to show you progress.
Right.
And then I'm dealing with other women that are upset because their Frappuccino was made bad. And no offense to any of my girlfriends out there, no offense to any of my civilian girls, but their nails weren't done right. Yeah, and they're frustrated. And I always joke, okay, they had babies and now they've got issues. And I'm like, come on, get it together. I get it. Life happens really fast and we get frustrated over these things. But what kind of issues are you facing? You call that tragic? Yeah, let me tell you what I faced on the Iraqi border. Let me tell you the faces and the dust and the sadness and the death and so we really have to learn how to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And move forward. And I think that we definitely have come a long way, 100%. But we also negate some of the important qualities when you look at it. It's not just about going to the VA. It's not just about getting that support, but how do you maintain a mission? How do you maintain moving forward
Yeah.
for, again, going back to your purpose, your life choices,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting where where you talk
where you
about
talk about
just the surroundings, right? I'm used to, or we were used to being with that group of folks. I mean, I was getting phone calls all the time. I mean, it was clockwork. I'd get home from work after working late, almost every day, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I'd get home, dinner would be ready. The family's about to eat. Right when I'm about to sit down, my phone's ringing, right? And it's not always a bad thing. It was a good thing. It was a question, hey, this and that, whatever it may be. But it was constant. My phone rang regularly, emails regularly, and then I kid you not, uh, very shortly, if it wasn't even a week, maybe 2 weeks after my retirement ceremony, not even the actual official retirement date, my retirement ceremony, the phone stopped. It was, I mean, you got the congratulatory phone calls to say great career for about a week. That was great. The second week, it just was no more. It kind of, and you're right, the emotional support what you're used to, it was a little, I don't want to say appalling. It just, I didn't realize it. Like, I mean, I'd heard these stories and I was like, yeah, I'll always have it this way. But it wasn't. And it didn't hurt my feelings any, but it was just a blast of reality that, wow,
Mhm.
you kind of know your place in life. I mean, when you're in the military, you can benefit people, you can influence things, you can help, because that's what we're doing. And it's not because it's not a hurtful thing. That's what we do. We're searching for someone to guide us, right? Well, then when you get out, that stops. So what else replaces that? And I think that where this podcast kind of filled that void for me is that I get the opportunity to still provide that service, if you will. And more importantly, because I've done this podcast, I've got to look and get into the space that you're in and learn what you're doing out there. And I can't wait till we actually start talking about where you're at now and where you started from, because I mean, it's been an amazing growth in just a year. I mean, just from what I've seen, and just the little news things you'll put up every couple months of, hey, this is awesome. Look at that. And and again, we'll talk about that, but you're filling such a void and doing so much for people. And that's where I love to be, is to see that stuff happening, because whether you're in Houston or San Antonio, or you're spreading your wings and going from state to state, there's people in San Diego that are helping. I met some folks out of Massachusetts and New York. We just had the second military influencers conference down here in Orlando. I took a ride over there and checked it out. I was hopeful that I'd see the famous Chaunte Myers, but I mean, obviously, we all have stuff going on. It's just, for me, I didn't go Dallas last year, but I went here to Orlando because it was an hour and a half away, which is good. Next year it's in DC, by the way.
That's
But it was really nice to get over there to meet a lot of the folks that I only live. I mean, I see them through social media, and they're in the same space and providing great content for people. So anyhow, so now I want to move forward. I do want to move. I don't want to take us way forward, but I want to get. So you go through that time where you're a personal trainer, and that's cool. I liked going to the gym, but I could never stand someone telling me like, "Hey, do it like this." I was like, "No, I'm good. I'll do it this way, right?" So anyway, so you go through your personal trainer stuff, and then what happens? Where do you go from there?
so I ended up opening my own gym for a while.
Okay.
And I realized that the entrepreneurship, gig wasn't my thing either in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times people think that, well, I'm going to start my own business. No one's going to tell me what to do anymore. And you're dreadfully wrong.
Yeah.
Because the customer is now your boss.
Yeah.
And so whatever they think is truth.
Real.
At the time.
Perception is reality, right?
So again, I was single at the time, no kids. And I find myself opening up this gym every morning, 4 a.m., closing the doors at 10 o'clock at night, just wondering, what am I doing? What is this? And again, it's that camaraderie piece. And thankfully, because of my mentors and my father, you want to come home, you better at least do it their way. Mm-hmm. And he told me to enroll in a bachelor's degree. Okay. And at the time, it was prior to, they weren't paying you to go to school.
Right.
So there wasn't the big perk that there is today. When people tell me they're not going to go to school, I think, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Even one online class at a time, you're getting $800+ You're nuts, right?
Yeah.
Take advantage of your benefits.
Yep.
And so I got through my bachelor's program and I got a bachelor's in business, and which was extremely beneficial because there I was starting a business. Therefore, when I go to the bank and I tell them, hey, I've been running this business successfully, thank you for giving me a loan simply because I'm a female veteran, all the accolades, all the perks, they'll give you the first loan. How are you going to ensure that retention? How are you going to ensure that you get the loan the next time? And so I was able to successfully sell that and move forward. But I always tell people that it was due to ensuring that I had my education. So it's looking at that, the full scope of, okay, you think you love doing this today.
Right.
You may not love doing that tomorrow.
Right.
And so I'm known for the joke that I got tired of telling people to eat chicken and vegetables, because at some point you end up realizing that, again, there's a little bit more to life, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so PT was one small aspect of the military, an aspect that I loved, that I was extremely passionate about. But again, I had everything else going on, right? And so we're pro education, we're continuing certifications, licensures, all those things. So when you get out, if you negate one of those, you're going to end up missing it. So I sold that. I walked into my next job and I was a director at the YMCA, a local YMCA. And it was due to the bachelor's degree and the certifications that supported and assisted. Had I had just had my bachelor's in kinesiology or physical fitness like I wanted, I wouldn't have gotten that role. Okay. And so I was wearing dual hats at the time. I was in the reserves as an E6 and a director at the YMCA, had 122 employees at the Y, and then had my troops on the weekends, right? 1 weekend a month.
Yep.
So that was fun. That was, you tell someone, and we can say this in the military, we tell someone what to do. We don't mean anything by it. It's, we know we need to do this to get here. Yeah. You do it, you go break bread, have a beer, chill, relax. It's great life. Yeah. I show up to work on Monday morning and I'm getting the emails and the crybaby sob stories. You're working me too much, tear. So going from, wearing both hats, it was a comical process, and it took a while to acclimate myself.
Could imagine. I can only imagine conversations I have with friends of mine that have. I mean, I think there's multiple routes you can go when you get out. But I listened to some of the stories about people that left the military completely and went out and worked in corporate and or just regular jobs, and I just hear the stories about some of the disconnects they have, the miscommunications, and it's. I mean, I've heard some really great stories too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's been people that have gone out to corporate America and have killed it, and they've done great things entrepreneurial wise. I mean, there's a bunch of great stories, but I just find myself laughing at some of these stories because of it's very common for us to say certain things, and it's not even the fact that we cuss or we do this and I mean, that I don't even mean it like that, but there's just certain things and ways that we talk, which is not even it's expected almost. It's not even that it's accepted, but it's expected. This guy's going to talk to me in this manner, and I get it, and I'm going to go do it because it's going to be fine. It doesn't work that well when you're out there, right? So it's just really interesting to really listen to some folks out here tell me about their stories. And
yeah, anywho. And the Air Force, by the way, we don't cuss, we don't say bad words, so. Not at all. So when I went to Fort Bliss, it always cracks me up because, at Fort Bliss, outside of Freedom Crossing, it says in big bold letters, "No profanity, please."
Right.
And so that's always a great segue for me to talk about, because I'm like, okay, your own store tells you to not have profanity. There should be a big sign as you're exiting the gate to say "No profanity," right?
Right. Oh, it's craziness.
Yeah.
It's craziness. So how long were you at the Y for?
About a year and a half.
Okay. And what was the thing that got, I mean, at a year and a half, because there's an average, I know they talk about first jobs. I know that wasn't your first job. I mean, you had a couple, you got to sell. They talk about like 13 months is the average first job. And I wouldn't call that your first job, but it's actually your first real role outside of the personal trainer. And you're actually working for not a client, but for somebody. So about a year and a half, that's about average, right? And then what happens? You decide that you've just had enough of this stuff, or was there other opportunity?
Absolutely other opportunity. That's when CMA. So in 2011, that's when Centurion Military Alliance started the concept, the idea. And it was from the fire in the back, sitting around talking with family members. My father at the time was in education, which he still is today. But he was at the time going to career fairs, and he was trying to talk to individuals about the power of education, why you need your education. And he just didn't understand why people were ignoring him, why they'd walk on, no, I need a job. I need a job. I don't need to go to school. I need a job. And this was at the time when the GI Bill had just approved for the basic allowance for housing, right? So you were getting your BAH for taking one class at a time. And so when I back up on my story, I had gone from the bachelor's degree, them just approving this, me thinking, what the F, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is not right.
Thank you. Good timing.
Perfect timing. And so then it was one of those things where my father was like, well, enroll straight into a master's. And I'm like, no, I never thought about that. I don't want more school. I'm a go-getter. I like to work out. So of course he won that argument. I started school, and what I realized was that with the power of education and continuing forward, that even my boss, the executive director at the YMCA, told me, he said, there's no way you can do all of this. There's no way you can be in the reserves. You can be working on a master's. You can give your all for me. And I just thought, well, okay, I'm not enrolling in school. I won't tell you what I'm doing anymore.
Right.
And so when you start talking about corporate America and what people expect from you, you're going back from, it was troops. There was a critical need. You were getting phone calls that your spouse knew you needed to answer the phone.
Yeah.
Then you're going through where I had just had a baby. My mother's calling me, hey, I've got your baby here. When you coming home, right? To try to help out. When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? And I'm dealing with people getting upset over a Zumba class.
Right.
And that's just the truth. And I understand Zumba is very important to be able to watch yourself in front of the mirror, to have your position. I get it. Right.
I know it's important. I'm just laughing because I actually have some Zumba instructors that I know that would tell you the same. So
it's so important. It's so important. So I get it. I mean, I've got all certifications, licensures. I'm tracking. I'm with you. I'm sorry, but I have children, and so.
Uh-oh. You froze up on me. Can you hear me? Well, that's not good. Well, sorry for the technical difficulties. Hope y'all are still there. I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring young Chaunte back in here in a moment. I apologize. It's going well. Here she comes. I know it. She's on her way. It's just taking a second. Hey, look it. I'm not a professional. There we go. Look at that. We're back.
All right, we good?
Yeah, we're great. It wasn't even like, I don't even think anybody realized we were gone.
No, definitely not. Oh.
Too easy.
So what were we saying?
Well, basically, you were talking about the degree, going to get your master's, and then having stuff at home and kind of juggling back and forth.
Yeah. So the whole point to that is that corporate America isn't easy either, right? And the whole point is that mentally you're going to have to overcome a few of those things. That it's going to be late hours. It's going to be, hours that you may not have expected. I know that personally. My husband works in oil and gas, and I never know where he is. He's all over the place. He's traveling all over. That's scary, right? I I was teasing a chief because we taught at the chief's course recently, and obviously we're going to get into that. But a chief told me that his wife was calling him, wondering where they were going that night, and concerned because it's the whole TDY thing. And I thought,
Right.
wow, I haven't heard that in a really long time.
Yeah. Right.
That's not how the corporate world works, because
No.
so much is expected of you and demanded of you, and you don't have time to cross the T's and dot the I's, and you're just moving forward trying to run this rat race.
Right.
So I realized really quickly the disconnect from my father talking about education, people ignoring that fact, to whether it was my husband's story of, injured in Iraq, was in the hospital 9 months, infantry, what was he going to do after?
Yeah.
And so he had a hard time transitioning out of the military. His wasn't by choice.
Right.
And so then you're looking at people who choose to transition, those who don't choose to transition, those who retire, those who don't retire. And you start throwing everybody together in this big transition assistance program.
It's great. Very general.
Voila.
Yeah. No, I got you. There's the part where it's tough, right? Generalities. Everything's in generalities, but I mean, yeah. Rough.
Yeah. So that's when the concept of Centurion Military Alliance came about. And so our three pillars were in line with the VOW Act, DOD, and we titled them Educational Attainment, Financial Literacy, Vocational Proficiency. And so then my father, who had transitioned out in 2006 without his education being complete, being the typical man, the PJ, the go-getter, it's like enough said, right?
I don't need all that. I got this. Why do I need education?
Right. But he always pushed education. He believed in education. He actually gave up his education for us. So way back in the day, we were in Japan, and it was beat. It was when you could turn it back in and you'd get cash for turning it back in. And so he thought he'd get his degree later on, but then it was he'd come home, he'd help with homework. He was playing video games with my brothers, right? It was the relationship aspect.
Of course.
And then time creeps up on you and you transition out. He had the corner office. He thought he had it great. And then it was, where's your bachelor's degree?
Yeah.
And so when he started school, and he always says it's by the hand of God, a recruiter ended up calling him from a university and rocked his world, was like, hey, you want to come work for us and start our military division? He thought they were going to get to the point in the conversation where they were going to say, well, he told him, he said, I don't have a degree. And they said, no, you commit to us. We see your recruiting background. We need someone with your expertise.
Yeah.
You enroll in school. And he enrolled in school and he never looked back. And so his dissertation, his PhD, was focused on the mentoring components within the military structure on educational attainment, financial literacy, and vocational proficiency.
Wow.
So it's beautiful. It's beautiful. The concept is absolutely gorgeous. And so when I read his dissertation, and he always teases me because I didn't have nerd status, right?
Right.
And I was the cool chick. I'm the personal trainer. I like to be out and about. And so now as I'm sitting down and I'm reading this, and he's looking at me and he's stunned. He's like, wow, you actually understand this.
You mean you can read too?
You can read? Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And so now we're able to take this to a larger platform, and we're able to teach this and move forward. And the beautiful blessing is that the military structure, they've embraced it because they realize that we need the community support to come in and to assist. Yeah. So
yeah, it's great. So I got to tell you, and I definitely want to get here. This is where I want to be, and it's really interesting the things that you said. Your father and I should actually sit down and talk sometime. I'd love to hear from him, because I tell you, we're very similar in certain aspects, and I don't have my degree right now. I mean, I go to school on and off. I mean, I have enough credit hours to have a bachelor's degree, but because I changed my major multiple times, and I actually, towards the end of my career, all I wanted to do was learn. Like I was that guy. If I wanted to go to school, I wouldn't have joined the Army. I mean, I said that when I was a kid. I mean, that was just easy to say. I didn't want to go to school, and no one really pushed me though. But when they'd ask, it would be the simple answer. But all through my career, from the moment that I was a leader of people, right? I mean, when I got promoted to E5 in the Army, the Army wasn't focused on civilian education. A lot of military education was, I mean, because that's how they based promotion on, right? So civilian education wasn't much of a priority. I'd always tell folks, listen, even this is even back in the day before all the good stuff came. I mean, you still had TA and stuff, but it wasn't like it is now anyway. But I said, if you came in for something, thank you for your service. And although over years it's gotten a lot more, thank you for your service. It means a lot. It truly does. People, when they say it, they mean it. And I genuinely think they do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to say nothing. But it doesn't mean I'm going to give you a lot of money now. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you a job, a corner office. I'm going to give you all this stuff because you served. They still have a business to run, right? And you have to understand that. And I do understand it. So I'd always tell people, hey, listen, if you came in just for the experience, well, you got here. Now go home and do the same thing you were doing, because that's what's going to happen, because you have nothing else to fall on. But while you're here, take advantage of it. Get some level. And whether, you talked about it, certifications or licensures or a degree, whatever it may be, do something to market yourself outside of the military. And then through time, it developed into the, hey, listen, now that the Army and the Air Force, because I was in a lot of joint units, so I had the Marines, I had the sailors, the Marines, the airmen, and the soldiers. Say, look, take all of what market yourself for promotion. Everybody is starting to work towards civilian education, technical certifications within the military. So they're helping you market here for promotion, but they're also helping you to make yourself credible when you get out of the military. So take advantage of that, because again, thank you for your service sounds nice and it means something, but it doesn't mean you got a job when you get out of here. So very, 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 I'd love to talk to your dad just because of that, because the fact that he was pushing it, I did too. I just didn't take the opportunity to do the degree thing. Now, the fact that he's got a PhD, you said he got out in 06 and he had no degree, and now it's 2018. He got his PhD earlier this year or last year. When was it?
2016.
16. Okay. I remember seeing. I remember you had posted something a while back. I mean, it's been a while now. Time flies, right? But I remember he was on it. Yeah, it was awesome to see that.
He might have walked right at 2017. You might be right.
Okay. I mean, it's somewhere around. I don't have that great of a memory, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's been since that we've been on LinkedIn. But no, that's awesome. In 10 years, he went and did something. I mean, that's phenomenal. And you talk about never look back, and that's phenomenal. I wish more people would do that, because you're exactly right. Education's huge.
Well, and I think that's what kept him on mission, on point. And what a lot of people don't know is that he actually battled cancer back to back during that time. And so there was a time where he almost gave up, and he always tells the story great, and to me, it's the typical PJ way, where it's, I'm standing there, not dressed, getting ready to get in the shower. And my mom, he's like, your mom comes in and she starts yelling at me. And you're giving up on us, Stephen, you're giving up on us. And he said that he was just, through the tears, and I'm not giving up. I'm having my ass handed to me here.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what the good stories are made of. Yeah. And when you continue on a mission and you continue on a purpose, and that's the message of Centurion Military Alliance, is to continue forward, to find that mission, to find that reason why. And my father shared, he's witnessed the lost lives of brothers and sisters. We've witnessed the lost lives of our brothers and our sisters, and yet we keep progressing forward. Why is that? Because it's the legacy. If we don't look around, what are we leaving to the rest of the world? And someone actually shared it with me last Friday night. I went to a gala, Wishes for Heroes, or it was Whiskey and Wishes, something like that. But it's Wishes for Heroes, and it was out of San Antonio, Texas. And one of the Gold Star family members came up to me and she told me, hey, I lost my husband this year. And she said that I heard about you and I really wanted to come up and meet you. I'm so glad you're here. And that's always humbling. You're like, well, right, why me?
Yeah.
And she started sharing her story, and it was such a positive message, because she said, if I don't share my story, what's going to happen?
What's it for?
Right. And so don't let it be for vain. Don't let your stories and what you went through, don't allow the other generation to rise up and to constantly be infuriated with the internet not working on time, the cappuccino's not being made, whatever the case is. Slow down for a minute and realize what we're going through.
Yeah.
And so we've become so numb that it was the same thing that we went through last year with Hurricane Harvey. And then this year, what my family faced in North Carolina and losing their home. And we've become so numb that we're not understanding that, hey, there's a lot of people going through things right now. Open your eyes and be open to it, and don't be so self-centered.
Yeah.
Right? Be on mission.
Yeah, and you're always going. I mean, that was a lesson I got to learn from my family. I mean, my family is pretty resilient in a lot of different ways. I am too a cancer survivor. I mean, I got diagnosed with cancer in 2002. So now I'm at seven. Well, it's 16 years right now. It'll 16 and a half years. I'll be clear. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah. So I just it's always interesting to me to have those conversations. But I tell you, as we move through things, the one thing my family's always said is no matter what you're going through, no matter what it is, someone not far from you is going through something so much worse. You don't have to look to another country. You don't have to look to another state. You can walk down the street and because we don't know what happens on the other side of a door, right? I mean, it's the same concept to me as the transition. You can look at all these different people saying stuff about how great it is, how bad it is, how all that stuff exists. You're going to go on the other side of that door. It's coming. I mean, inevitably, you're going to leave the uniform, and it can be scary, and you can have the worst transition ever. But someone's had it worse, so pick up your britches or whatever they say, and let's go. It's the entitlement that I get a little frustrated with when I hear people say I should have. But if you did not prepare yourself, like you had made mention, is this planning, and doing that. Because look, what did someone say? If plan A doesn't work, there's 26 letters in the alphabet. You know what I mean? It's really interesting to me, but you should have those plans because look, no plan survives first contact. That's something that you hear in the military all the time, and you just know. I mean, if you have something set out, then set your goals and set your vision, and do it in a manner like you're saying, with that mission focus, and you'll do it, and because you've done it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the way I look the same.
Here's the biggest thing to me is that, again, it's not negating your military service, and that's what I find a lot of us do is we think we're going to be completely different, right? We're going to get on the other side and we're totally different people. And you're like, So who have you been for how many years that you've been that way? And so think about how many times you transitioned within the military.
Yeah, right.
Let's just stick to the military alone. How many times did you PCS or go on another training platform, or you're progressing for rank, or we're constantly progressing. Mm-hmm. We're constantly in a state of transition.
Yeah, 100% right.
Right? Yeah. So why do we make it so difficult on ourselves?
That's really truly. I've never really looked at it like that before, ever. I've had a lot of conversations about different things, but you're right, 100% right. Definitely understand that we're from a non-stable perspective in the military, stable from a monetary perspective, stable from a cohesive, but you move and you have to, it's really interesting because you go from one unit to the next. And it's really interesting because you can look back and say how much you love that unit. Although when you were there, it sucked, right?
It was sucked. It's
right. But
one of my best friends used to tease me because he said, when I got to that base, it was everything that came out of my mouth was, my last base? At my last base. Right. You're not at your last base. You're at this base. And so you start to realize that concept, but don't negate what you went through.
Exactly. Right? And build from it. Right. I mean, and I think that's the beauty of it all is that, I mean, well, just so you know, my friends used to say that when I got done being a drill sergeant, I was a drill sergeant for about 3 years. And every time after that, I'd say, when I was a drill sergeant, that was like my catchphrase, right? I should have a TV show called When I Was a Drill Sergeant. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, you, and all of those things, there's growth, right? There is. I mean, it's different people. You're becoming more. I mean, you don't have to be an extrovert. I mean, it's really interesting how many introverts there are in the military. With as much as we do, and we get up on stages or we get up in front of people and we do all these things, there's a lot of people that are introverted, and you'd be amazed, right? But they're still put into new situations, and those folks, it takes a little bit longer for them to adjust, but they do it. I mean, so throughout the 20 years that I was in, and there's so many people that served 30. Even in 5 years or 9 years or 12 years, there's so much movement from new places to live, to new cultures, to new people, to all that stuff. mean, you're very right. I truly had never looked at it in that manner as far as the transition is concerned. But yeah, it shouldn't be something that would be so difficult to go through. Um, Culturally, it's different, when you're exchanging that's the, but I mean, because a lot of people, they're not defined by the uniform in which they wore, but a lot of people lost their identity in some way, shape, or form. That's what I hear a lot of, is people talking about, well, I can't be this guy or this girl when I'm on that side of this world, right? I think that if you can be, you just have to pick the right job that fits with that, if that's what you're looking for, like a drill sergeant. No, you
Right.
could be a drill sergeant, not at the Centurion Military Alliance. I can't go and be a drill sergeant and start hollering at everybody to get stuff done. I could be a correctional officer. I mean, I can go and do that. I mean, if that's the
Yep.
person that you are and want to be, I mean, there's always something to, but I'm not one of those folks that let the military or anything define me. I let it help me grow. And man, it gave me everything. Right. But it's just interesting to have the different conversations. And you've said it best in the beginning. Well, not the beginning, but a while back, about the sitting in a 4 or 5 day program where you have a bunch of stuff being thrown out that's very general to people that are retiring, people that are transitioning, people that are being forced out, because there's an emotional and psychological perspective that a lot of people don't think about, right, when that happens. So you bringing that up is to me anyway, that may be one of the biggest keys that a lot of people don't really think of, is that the emotional and the psychological impact on leaving. And for the reason, if you're getting
Right.
out intentionally, you probably have a plan. I mean, you probably have something in which you're doing. But when you're forced out and you wanted to serve or whatever, there's a it's a rough situation. Hey, by the way, so, and I don't like to bring people's personal stuff on here, but we were talking about the YMCA. We moved up into Centurion Military Alliance, and you said my husband, and you made mention of a child. When did you meet your husband? I like. I mean, I just. When did that happen? I like to hear people's stories about it. And then I met my husband on this wonderful whatever it was that happened. And, I mean, it's just, I remember hearing it. I just didn't remember it.
This crazy one night in the streets of San Antonio. I picked him up, he's begging for money. It was awkward. Yeah.
And here we are, right?
Here we are today. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
It's not true.
No.
But no, actually, so online education, believe it or not, I was going to school online, and one of our mutually really good friends, Tim Stroud, so if he's on or he joins later, he'll hear this, but he had introduced us because he was in the same class that I was in.
Okay.
And so he invited me to come to some event where Jared was going to be speaking at, and I went and I heard his story, and his story just was very empowering of what he had gone through. And so we battled. He was in a really different place. I come from a really strong, demanding, kind of tough love kind of person. Mm-hmm. And so I told him to get up and stop crying, basically. And he knows that. He always teases me because of that strength. But we had very different stories. And so for me, it was, how are you going to progress forward? And though I loved his story and I loved where he was, I wanted to see more. I wanted to see, how do you transition beyond that?
Yeah.
And for example, he was one of those that was in for 3.5 years. The military life was all he had known, was all he wanted to know. He lost his best friend right next to him. On our wedding day, he was still wearing his dog tags. And so it was those moments that I was looking at him going, when are you going to stop doing that?
Yeah.
When are you going to progress forward? When are you going to move on and understand, and today he's got a master's degree. He's doing great. And he knows that he's been able to take that, but it's not without hesitation. It's not without the struggles and the strife and the understanding that our service members go through a lot of things. I recently posted on LinkedIn about traumatic brain injury. Mm-hmm. and going through the way now the brain's able to actually work. And when you start to look at those difficulties that a lot of our service men and women have, it's nothing to laugh at, for sure. It's something that needs to be taken seriously, and we need to do a better job from the medical aspect of looking at, a lot of these individuals have gone through that. Right. So that was kind of our crazy story, but a 4 and a 6-year-old later and
Yeah.
progressing forward and moving on. It's part of our CMA story. So
Yeah, and how inspirational is it? I mean, I really wanted to. So I didn't know that story as a completion, right? I mean, I've seen things like snippets of different aspects of his life, and well, not his whole life, but y'all's together and how it, through the time. I wanted it to be shared with the folks that listen because both. I mean, I could take that a little bit ago. You were talking about what CMA is about, right? And I could take that video and you could use that as a commercial because the one thing that it wasn't rehearsed. It's something that was said. It was genuine, passionate. I mean, it was great, and I could hear it. Right, I loved it, and the way you talk about your husband and what he went through, and the way I've seen you guys in different aspects as you've moved up, your whole family, right, is pretty much magnificent. I mean, it's really it's an inspiring family. It's an inspiring story for us, right? I mean, you share it with everybody. I mean, and no matter if I'm in Florida or someone's out in Japan or wherever it's at, to be able to follow you on LinkedIn. By the way, if you're not following her on LinkedIn, we'll get all that stuff at the end so we can make sure that you are following. Because listen, yeah, the heroes you won an award or something, didn't you? Win an award not too long ago, the other night I think it was, right? And the one that you were talking about. Yeah.
yes.
So tell me about that. I just want to hear. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
So Impact a Hero is a local nonprofit organization. They actually have a national presence, but they really focus on Houston, Texas right now, and they're doing great things for post-traumatic growth. And so initially, when they called me and they told me that I had been nominated, I thought, well, do you mean my husband? Do you mean somebody other than me?
Right.
And it was one of those moments, I think, in life where you realize you've been given a platform to speak. And that's why I shared and wrote an article about it, that I'm going to share that story and those successes and why. And so I tease my buddy, the executive director of Impact a Hero, Mike Nash, that I was chosen because I was a girl. But then that's okay because girl power. And
Right.
I can come in and speak to that. And so while my story may not have been as traumatic, and I didn't receive a Purple Heart like my husband, I didn't go through things that my father did as a pararescue. And I think that we constantly in the military, and I've even seen this in the civilian sector, where we set ourselves apart or we put ourselves in these categories. Well, I only deployed this many times.
Yeah.
You didn't deploy at all. You're not a combat veteran, right? Whereas not the sacrifice and the ability to raise your right hand to serve others, still a service.
Yeah.
And so when I was given this award, and what I realized was that, again, it comes back to having the ability to be able to speak on a national platform for other people that are going through things. And as a woman, I shared that it's not just what I went through, whether it was on the border of Iraq, but it's the same thing that I may go through when I'm in DC and I'm trying to raise funds for CMA.
Right.
The stories are real. They don't change. It doesn't matter whether it's the sandstorm or if it's, the windstorm. They're legitimate. And they're legitimate concerns that if we're going to progress forward and we're going to continue to move to our next mission, I always share with people, and especially women, understand why you want to move forward. Understand, I was sharing this with a young lady today who's very near and dear to my heart. And she said, well, you're just a positive person. And I told her, I said, I'm not. I love the holidays. I love Hallmark. I love decorating. I love, right? It's Christmas is almost here. But what's reality? Yeah. Reality is getting up at 4 a.m. and having the tears and trying to complete a doctoral paper, of being upset, of the struggles of life, of the fights, of the dealing with, whether it's the TBIs and the high emotion from me of going. And now how do I stop?
Yeah.
How do I calm down? That's real life. And so I think a lot of times we see things on social media and we think, well, that person has it great, right? Their transition was seamless.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an officer. They have a degree. Or it's late last night getting a resume from a colonel, and I thought, is this a joke? I don't even have a bottle of wine right now, right? Like, you're kidding me. This isn't what you just sent me. for a job that's VP status.
Yeah.
And you sent me, well, I was a colonel of. And so transition does not discriminate. It affects us all equally. And it's understanding that, okay, who's going to be there to pick me up? And that's where we need the community-based approach. We need the community to come in and say, okay, hey, we're partnered with the Society of Human Resource Management. We're partnered with businesses and organizations that do more than just say, thank you for your service. But they're going to truly assist you and navigate you through the process. It's going on LinkedIn and looking for those that will support you and not just give you rhetoric.
Right.
Not just sell you a book. Not sell you their product. We all have great stories. We all could charge $20 for a book. I'm going to refrain from that. And I'm going to share my story.
I'm going to refrain from that. Yeah. No, definitely.
So by the way, this podcast is is costing you.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. My wife controls the money. I'll let you talk to her about it. I'm sure it's valuable. She'd do it. Hey, I got to tell you, and so I'm going to give you a couple props right quick. So over the course, when I started this podcast, January of 17, prior to that was kind of in the September, October time of 16. I was getting out on LinkedIn, looking on Facebook, looking at different cities or close, like military places. Obviously, San Antonio being military city, right? I learned that later. I didn't know that really, to be honest with you, but I learned that's what its title, nickname, or whatever. I saw what Centurion Military Alliance was doing with the community, with the different organizations that are out there in the San Antonio area, trying to bring them in for sponsorship or for helpful, whatever it was. I just saw that value, right? I looked at that. So what I did was I kind of went around America, looking for similar things that were happening. There are similar things, which is great. Like there's a organization, Vetlanta. It's not the same, but I mean, it's similar, right? It's Atlanta doing, I mean, a great story over there with Lloyd Knight, and he's the founder over there. Then in San Diego, there's a couple things going on. But I was kind of frustrated that in Tampa, Florida, we have a humongous veteran population here. I mean, we have we have 2 4-star commands at MacDill. We have a 2-star command. There's a lot of senior folks here, but the city itself was lacking. There was people doing things, a lot of people doing things, but very separate. Over the course of the last year, I've been very proud to say that Tampa has done a great job. And I mean, we're not at San Antonio level yet, or Atlanta, but the progress that we've made with some of our senior veteran leaders that are out there in our communities, even the junior folks that get out there and just do stuff. It's just amazing. And for me to be able to see it, I got a front row seat. I mean, I'm trying to help as much as I can. I mean, I'm not that guy. I try to be, I try to be in 5,000 places at once. It doesn't work, but I really want to give the support because all these folks are out here doing some great things. And what it shows me is that one day maybe we'll have what you have. Maybe not as far as CMA is concerned, the Centurion Military Alliance is yours, and that's a great thing. But I'm just talking about the community that's lifting up and having a little bit more to talk about than just, and not to say that it's not important to have awareness, but the couple things that a lot of folks think about are, veteran homelessness, veteran unemployment, PTSD, suicide rate. All those things need to have awareness, but we also have to bring awareness to how great our communities are, our veteran communities are. We have veteran entrepreneurs that are doing great things, $4.4 trillion into the economy last year alone. But so there's a lot of great things that we're doing. So with what you guys are doing out there, I mean, it can be a template for so many people to use and to benefit from, only because I just see it. I've seen it for the past. I mean, like I said, I have a front row seat here in Tampa, but I got my phone and it's always on LinkedIn. I'm looking at it and I'm just, there they are again.
Well, we actually, so we have a national footprint, and we go where we're invited.
That's where I'm glad.
We go where we're invited.
You knew what I was. See, that's what I was leaning to, because I seen some news about the national. So tell me about the national. Look at that. I'm setting them up. You're knocking them down. This is like perfect. Yeah. So tell me about that. So I saw you were out there at the Sergeant's Major Academy not too long ago. I mean, it's probably been about 8 months, 9 months now. Yeah, but see how time flies. But anyhow, So you're out there and you've been doing some things. So recently, a couple months maybe, I saw a post that said something about expansion, going other places now. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so since we started, we officially became a 501c3 in 2013. we were solely in San Antonio.
Right.
But that year alone led to Round Rock, Texas, Fort Hood, which the following year, Fort Bliss, and then JBLM, Seattle, Colorado Springs, San Diego, Hawaii. And so people always are like, well, how do we get the Hawaii gig, right? Uh, and that came about solely from my family. So my sister-in-law was actually stationed out there.
Okay.
We went out there, we saw the lifestyle, and we realized the large transitioning population, met a few key leaders in the area that have become the big community support. So for me, as the CEO of Centurion Military Alliance, it's my goal to have those individuals at each location that support and that are kind of the game changers. And so obviously, as we continue to grow, as we continue to progress, it would be my goal for you to go out there and you to be our spokesperson in Tampa, and then to say, okay, Chaunte, this is going to be a great time for you to come in and instruct this multidisciplinary curriculum. So we are all over. I'm getting ready to put the 2019 events on our website right now. I have not yet done that. But here's why, is because this year alone, I've had installation commanders. So from Colonel Gary Dormant in Florida at Eglin Air Force or Hurlburt Field call me and said, Chaunte, we want to get this program here. We want you here. Will you come? Mm. I'm definitely not going to say no.
Right. Of course.
And so while people have that enthusiasm, while they want to get the ball rolling, and then the Society of Human Resource Management, they're absolutely phenomenal down there. We had a flood of support come in. And so we ended up being there twice this year. Mm-hmm. So with that alone, wherever we're invited, I sat down with a lot of key leaders. So a lot of Air Force installation commanders that said, we want you to come here, 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 here. And what you end up realizing is that the sky's the limit. We are now signing an MOU. We've been approved for Joint Base San Antonio. They want us on installation monthly. So that's a little bit of a game changer too. And so you start to look at the traction and the footprint, and we have that access to a population immediately to be able to share a message and a curriculum that for us is absolutely, critical to the success. Yeah. Furthermore, because of the Army and USASMA, and they launched it. It's absolutely brilliant that they launched it under that Soldier for Life model that the Air Force said, why are we not doing this? Right. And then the Navy E8s and E9s said, well, wait a minute, what's going on? They're doing it. Yeah. And so now Centurion Military Alliance has been invited on installation to the E8, E9 schools to actually instruct our multidisciplinary curriculum. That's, again, absolutely phenomenal. And so we teach that educational attainment, and it's kind of circles. Mm-hmm. So educational attainment, financial literacy, and vocational proficiency. You cannot be successful if any of those pillars are hindered. Yeah. You need all three for success. Mm-hmm. And so it's more than a command chief recently called me from Utah, and a good friend now, because he's kind of paved the way. And so here he is, the command chief, and he said, Chaunte, I just paid $500 for a resume. I'm like, why? Why? Yeah. And so people will look and they'll think, well, this colonel, well, you're good. I had a 2-star attend our last event. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the most humble men I've ever met. Yeah. He posted about CMA on LinkedIn. I still had no clue he was a 2-star until one of my buddies called me and they said, he was a 2-star, right? Mm-hmm. And so again, transition doesn't discriminate. Right. And so when you're looking at, okay, well, Chaunte, what gives you this platform? Why are you the CEO of a nonprofit organization? And those are great questions that should be asked to anyone in positions where you think it's powerful, mm-hmm. or you think you have a voice. Mm-hmm. Question the individual and ask them why. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was initially the bachelor's degree, then the MPA with an emphasis in government and policy, which I fought tooth and nail because I wanted a master's in Christian studies. Yeah. Right? My father said, why the hell would you do that? Right. Yeah. To now working on a doctorate. But in the interim, I was obtaining a human resources certificate. Mm-hmm. I was getting an executive level coaching certificate. Mm-hmm. I wasn't showcasing my face on LinkedIn, I wasn't showcasing where it was all about me and speaking to. I was getting the credentials
Yeah.
that allow me a voice and a platform to continue a message that we're lifelong learners
Hmm.
and we're here to support and progress, right?
Awesome. That's awesome. I mean, and that's again inspirational. I mean, when look, I tell you, so we just had I have a about to be a 2 month old baby, right? So I've got four children. I got a 2 month old, a 3 month old, or a 3 year old. Excuse me, that'd be crazy. But a 3 year old, and I have a 12 year old and a 13 year old, and obviously we have a busy schedule. Life is life, right? My wife has actually just started her master's degree right now, which is great. So she got the baby in one hand. The 3 year old is like bothering her over here because she wants time, and then she's still plugging away. And that's an amazing thing to me, the effort put forth. So not now I say that to say I seen you doing this stuff, but now I'm hearing what you're doing without the stuff, right? With social media stuff, and you make a great point that we don't share. I mean, it's 99% of people don't share the crap that's going that the bad stuff in life. They share the things because they want to, whether it's because they just want to look good or because they just want to inspire. Or like me, I share a lot of positive stuff. I'm a positive guy, right? But I don't like say, this bad stuff's happening to me. Everybody, you should now send prayers and I mean, we don't typically doesn't happen like that, right? So where all the things that you're talking about that are positive, you're doing on the backside. You're showing Centurion Military Alliance, which again I do recognize when you do post. You're not always center picture. It's CMA, the people in the crowd. It's the brand itself. Which is good for marketing. And oh, by the way, it's more than Chaunte Myers. It's something much larger, which is a great message, right? But you're not only doing that, which is a full-time thing, even more so than full-time, right? But you're obtaining the credentials that make you credible, and I think that's what people tend to push that credibility to the side. I'm going to share a quick story with you, and it's very quick. I always talked, and I mean, I'm a professional speaker. I want to spit. If I could not do anything else in life, if I could stand on a stage and share my story and just tell jokes or whatever it was, if I could do that and never have to worry about the business side of life, like because there's a business side, right? That's not the fun stuff. Like when you're out there in front of people, business has already happened. Now this is the part where you get to enjoy it, right? Because you're talking or whatever it is. If I could do that and get paid and never have to do another thing in my life, I would. And I was very naive when I left the Army, thinking that the credibility that I had from being a soldier was going to propel me into instant, and it wasn't stardom. I could care less about stardom, but it's a financial stability for my family from speaking. I was kind of naive because I don't have credentials to do that. I didn't have anything that said I should be speaking in front of you except for a story, right? Now, sometimes that's all you need. And my stories are not that good, so I needed more. I mean, if I wanted to get more, so for the past year, I've been kind of in and out of stuff to get myself in the credible civilian side credibility, right? Not just within the military. So anyhow, it's really great to see that's what you've been doing. I mean, I wouldn't have known, right? I wouldn't have known what your education level is. I wouldn't know that you're in it going for your doctorate, which is awesome. Congratulations. I have a very, very good friend of mine going through right now, and he'll finish up in March, April timeframe. And I know he's super excited about that to be done. But hey, good on. I mean, that's you can't take it away. I mean, that's something that's huge, is you can't take it away from somebody. And I think it's
right. It's tangible, and that's the important part about education, is that, and that's what goes back to CMA's pillars, is that the more education I've received, the more vocationally proficient I've become.
Yeah.
The more I've understood the financial literacy aspect, the more than balancing a checkbook, right? Yeah. And so going back to your story, my first deployment with the Air Force, I was in the gym every single day, no different than now. And a lady in her 80s that traveled from installation to installation, retired colonel's wife, he had passed away. And she always was just so beautiful to me, because in her 80s, working out every day, right? That's the dream. And I wanted to make sure that I told her that I was leaving and that I was deploying, so that she knew why I was missing the gym.
Yeah. It was important. It's important, right? When gym rats are there, you want to know why. Hey, it's 5:00 and she's not here. She's slacking today. Yeah.
And so I remember her stopping me, and she hugged me, and she stared into my eyes, and she told me, she goes, "One day, young lady, you're going to be speaking to thousands. And I remember thinking, okay, all right, you know, she's like,
Okay.
no, seriously. Oh yeah. And she kept, it's like, you have a ring of daisies around your head. You have this great aura. You have this great. And I thought, I mean, I'm a Christian, but it's a far stretch for me.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And so years later, this year alone with the Joint Women's Leadership Symposium, with some of the recognition, and it's always humbling because again, we're working towards this, and I say we're because a lot of times it's hard for us to take the credit, but it's not just me. It's the back end. It's my father who's pushed me. It's my mother who keeps my children. She homeschools my two babies for me. And it's all that support. It's like you saw earlier, my brother setting up my computer and he's my IT guru, right?
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yelling, why did you do this ahead of time? My other brother who just finished his PhD minus the dissertation through rigorous training with the State Department. And so when you start to look at the concept, we wouldn't be where we are without a support structure.
Yeah, right.
And so that's always my message, right? Have your support structure. Don't do things alone. Don't feel the need that you have to do them alone. It's better as a team.
Yeah, without a doubt. And don't be scared to ask. A lot of us were macho and we served and we don't need to ask anybody for help. But then, at the end of the day, we'd rather fail and fall on our face than just say, hey, buddy, pal, someone, stranger, can you please help me? Me, on the other hand, I'm not too proud. I will ask for help. As a matter of fact, now that we're friends, I don't know if you know this. That's like this is a prerequisite. So even though you don't know me from anything, but you were on this show, so now we're friends, which means I can call you at any time and say,
"Oh, absolutely."
No, I'm just
absolutely.
So I do want to ask you this though. So if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody as they transitioned, if there was one thing that stood out amongst the rest, what would it be? The one thing that you could tell them?
I think first off, to be humble and to understand that we live in an entitled generation. And so while people are telling us thank you for our service, like you mentioned earlier, to accept the thank you, but know that we need to step up to the plate. We're the servant leaders. We chose to serve our country. And so as we transition out, we're still choosing to serve by becoming productive members of society. And awesome. Then, and don't transition alone, don't. Yeah. I'm here to help.
Yeah. And, and that's, so what is your website? I wasn't supposed to be a trick question. I know sometimes like, wait, no, I'm kidding.
CMAwarrior.org. CMAwarrior.org.
Yeah, awesome. Make sure that look for that CMAwarrior.org. So, and then if someone wants to reach you, how do they do it?
Chaunte Myers. You can look me up on LinkedIn. And obviously, I'm a huge advocate and supporter of LinkedIn. So please connect with me on there, CHAUNTEMYERS, as well as, a whole, everyone on our team, which you can look up. And then obviously they should connect with you on LinkedIn. Yeah. And if they're not connected with the LinkedIn guru, wink, wink, who would that be? Michael Quinn.
Michael Quinn. That's he is the man. Yeah.
He's the man.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
That I don't understand. So many folks don't know him. And I don't know why. I think I probably speak his name, send his name, do something with his name on a daily basis through LinkedIn or somewhere else. Michael Quinn is the LinkedIn guy, right? That's a great person to know. I mean, he's all over it. I love the fact that he's out there doing that stuff. Good plug for him right there. I got to make sure that I tag him and say, hey, look at this.
You do because I tease him all the time. I like to say that he's the guru, which he hates. Mm-hmm. And then I love LinkedIn with Quinn.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, tell him that's what he's. and next time you talk to him, tell him he needs to come on the show. It'd be great to have him. I'll have to reach out to him. But hey, so before I do leave, and I'm going to ask you to tell me you can't make this up story. Like you got to tell me a story that was just while you were in at some point. But I'll give you a moment to think about it. But I want to say this. I'm very excited that you came on, and I'm more than satisfied to listen to you talk about the financial literacy portion. The other things, for the pillars, huge. And don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to put one above the other, but I regularly talk about financial literacy and lack thereof from the enlisted side of the house in the military. Now, don't get me wrong, that's a very general statement. There's a lot of intelligent, bright, financially stable, and literate folks that are enlisted folks, especially nowadays. There's a lot of educated people that are on the enlisted side that back in the day they weren't. But you look into a parking lot of a unit that's in any branch, and you can see the officer cars, and they're usually 10 years old, paid off, junk, whatever they are. And then on the enlisted side, they just got back from deployment, so they bought themselves a $60,000 whatever, and they're living out of their car because they can't. Their apartment's not, you know what I mean? So, and I'm not going to say that's not literate, but it's not. The value or the understanding of how to use money and how to have money work for you is not there, and there's got to be some education. So the fact that you offer that is an amazing thing. And the other thing is, when you say you're there to help. Someone paying $500 for a resume when there's so many programs across the veteran space, no matter whether it's CMA or just, I mean, there's a million of them. I mean, they're a dime a dozen. Some are better than others. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not going to plug anybody's names in, but to spend you can spend money if you want. I'm not mad at people for spending money on a product, but you can spend much less than $500 on a just as good a product, if not better product, you know what I mean? Because it's usually done by someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes from the military vernacular to the civilian words, right? So I appreciate those services that you do offer. But that's when you said $500, I was like, man, you should write it back and say, get a refund, man. What are you doing? Kick yourself in the head. Spend $500 on something else. But anyway, so now that I've talked and rambled on for about 35 minutes, anyway, I want you to tell me. You can't make this up story. Something that happened while you were in the military and it doesn't have to be funny. It can be. That's what I like. I like humor. So it could be something hilarious, or it could be something that that if someone that you talk to outside of the uniform that never served a day in their life would just be like, what? Y'all did what? So any one of those stories would be great.
Yeah. We always have so many, and I love the humorous stories as well. And so here's two short stories to leave you with. First, because you mentioned financial literacy, and that means something to you. My commander sat me down. I was, like I said, I was 17 years old. It was my first duty assignment. And he said, do you have a savings plan? And I thought I was the sharpest one striper in the military. And I sat up straight, and I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, well, what is it? And I told him, I said, well, sir, I plan to marry a rich man. And he just looked at me and he chuckled. He thought, oh, isn't she so cute? Pat her on the head, right?
Yeah, right.
But I thought that was a phenomenal plan.
It's a great plan.
It's a great plan.
You got to find one.
It did not happen. No.
But you're getting there. Y'all be just fine. It's rich in spirit and love and hope and praise.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Right.
And so I always tease him because now, on top of his VA process and everything else, he can't get life insurance.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, that's on top of it. It's another joke because I'm like, okay, so now it's cheaper to keep them alive, right?
Yeah,
than it is to like.
The value in this relationship is you alive. That's where it's at. My wife says.
And so then the last part was we're at Camp Virginia. I'm left to man the tent alone. And I love this story and I've never shared it. So that's why I thought I'd share it with you because I thought you'd get a kick out of it. It is a bad storm. And so my whole team had forward deployed. I was left in charge to close up shop. And I had taken all of our wall lockers, you remember, sturdy, and I had posed them to where they were all lining the whole back of the tent. So I couldn't see all the other beds because it kind of freaked me out. Yeah. And I wanted my own space. So when you came through the tent, there was a wall locker guarding my bed. And then there were all the other wall lockers. And on the other side was going to be my space for my yoga mat. Okay. And I had lined it all with pretty pictures from magazines of like surfing pictures and ocean and beach. And so one night this storm came in and it was just flooded. And the tarp on the tent floor, and it was flooded with water. And so at my frame, I'm 5'4", 120 soaking wet. I took my Gerber knife and I cut out all the tarp. And so here it was like 2 a.m. having to be at work early in the morning. Yeah. And that's destruction of government property, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
And so I'm lugging it because I'm kind of fearful, and I'm lugging it through the sand in the storm, and all you hear is that and then I try to lug it into the dumpster so no one ever catches me. But so that's what crazy girls do on deployments when they're trying to have their space set up.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, it's not a bad thing, right? I gotta. Yeah. Did you ever get a chance to go to Qatar when you were out of?
I did.
What's that?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay, so yeah, we were at Asalea a long time ago. This long time. Were you at Al Udeed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just said so. Yeah. What
yeah.
happened? I'm just kidding. Yeah. So we used to do some funny stuff over there. I mean, it was you try to keep yourself occupied and so you're not. I mean, there's busy times and there's not so busy times. And those not so busy times, yeah. I could tell you stories, but it's not my. This is only my show. I don't get to tell the funny stories. But one day I'll have to tell you some funny stories that we did over that way. That I mean, there were innocent but fun. Just silly stuff. There are these little bikes all over the place and jump hills or whatever nonsense. But anyhow, well, good. Well, listen, I'm going to give you a moment. I want you anything that you want to say at all. This is your place. I want to redo the LinkedIn. We're going to look up Chaunte Myers, and if you go to www just 3 W's, right? Centurion was it Centurion Warriors .org?
No, CMA Warriors. CMA.
I messed that up like a champ. Look at that. Don't listen to me. I apologize.
That's all right. Shoot me a message. Shoot us a message on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and we'll get at you. How about that?
Definitely do. And don't forget, because the value that you provide, Chaunte, is it's unparalleled. It really is. I in the transition space, Centurion Military Alliance ranks number 1. And I'm not just saying that. I truly believe it. You're there. I follow you guys. I just like the stuff you're doing. The fact that you're being able to put yourself in a position to reach out to more veterans in different places and the transition service members. Awesome. It's a great thing to see. So yeah, if I can do anything down this way to help to facilitate that, then by all means, let's work something out. But there's a lot of people leaving this area, and some are prepared and some aren't. But at the end of the day, can't be too prepared. And I'd love to have you come down and talk to some folks over here. But thank you again. I appreciate you sharing your time in Houston with your kids there and everybody else in the house. I'm going to go and wrestle with mine before they fall asleep. As a matter of fact, I probably sleep, which is even better. I get to go to bed now. No.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyhow, thank you. Do you have anything that you want to say before we head out?
No, just thank you so much for your time as well. Thanks for having me.
No, I loved it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it. And I appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the other side.